Imagine hearing pounding at your front door, only to find people in police uniforms demanding to be let in. You think it's the law until you realize something is off. The badges don't look right, their story doesn't add up, and suddenly your door is splintering under their boots. But what they didn't know was that my wife was already 2 steps ahead, working undercover to expose them. And when the truth finally came out, the fallout was bigger than anyone could have imagined. Before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you don't miss any of these insane HOA and Karen stories. Drop a like if you enjoy this kind of drama. It helps a ton and keeps these wild stories coming your way. The neighborhood had long been under the suffocating grip of the HOA. From the outside, it looked like just another suburban development with picture-perfect lawns and manicured flower beds. But under the surface, it was run like a kingdom. The board wasn't just strict, it was controlling. Complaints stacked up against homeowners for the smallest details. A basketball hoop left out too long, trash cans positioned inches from regulation, or paint that was a shade off from the approved palette. But things escalated when the HOA began crossing boundaries no one thought possible. For months, rumors had been circulating that they were working with private security firms to intimidate residents. It started with late-night compliance checks where flashlights swept through windows. Then came the threats. Letters slipped into mailboxes with anonymous warnings. Most people were too afraid to speak up, but in our home, fear quickly turned to suspicion. My wife, who had been quietly gathering information, knew something wasn't right. She had a background in investigative work, and the signs were too obvious. Fake citations with misspelled statutes, envelopes with no return addresses, and official notices that carried no legal weight. She started building a file, documenting every detail, even reaching out to contacts who could help her confirm the legitimacy of the HOA's tactics. But the most chilling moment came one night when pounding rattled the front door. Voices on the other side shouted that they were the police and demanded entry. The pounding grew louder until the doorframe shook. My first instinct was fear, but then I noticed something. No flashing lights outside, no marked cars in the driveway, only 2 unmarked sedans idling quietly across the street. Through the peephole, the uniforms looked convincing, but the badges were wrong, the patches mismatched. These weren't cops. They were imposters sent by the HOA to intimidate us. My wife, already suspecting something like this, had her phone recording the whole thing. She whispered that this was the proof we needed, the moment that would expose them. As the door cracked under the pressure, she slipped into the back room where her files were hidden, making sure everything was secure. Just as the hinges threatened to give, real sirens wailed in the distance. Blue and red lights cut through the night, and the imposters froze. In seconds, they bolted, scattering into the dark. The real officers stormed onto the scene, finding us shaken but unharmed. What followed that night was the start of a much larger unraveling. My wife turned over her evidence, her recordings, and her files. The question now wasn't just about intimidation. It was about impersonation, fraud, and the HOA's terrifying abuse of power. And this was only the beginning of the story. The days after the attempted break-in felt like a blur of chaos and suspicion. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood, but the HOA tried to spin the story. They claimed the men at our door were part of a contracted security detail and that the entire incident had been a misunderstanding. They framed it as an overzealous compliance check, downplaying the fact that those men had posed as police officers. Neighbors began whispering, divided between those who feared retaliation and those who were sick of the HOA's overreach. My wife, meanwhile, kept pushing forward. She contacted local authorities, presenting them with the files she'd been compiling for weeks. The recordings, the fake letters, the photographs of unmarked vehicles, all of it built a chilling case. The HOA had essentially built a shadow enforcement unit, dressing hired hands in uniforms to scare homeowners into compliance. The audacity of it shocked even seasoned investigators. But Karen, the head of the HOA, wasn't backing down. She doubled down on the narrative, insisting her board was within its rights to ensure community safety. She even tried to rally supporters, hosting a meeting where she painted us as troublemakers who exaggerated the incident for attention. But this time the tide was shifting. Neighbors who had stayed silent for years were now speaking up. Families came forward with their own stories. Late-night visits, aggressive threats, unexplained fines. One family revealed that their teenage son had been followed home by the so-called security. Another admitted they had been too scared to report it. The truth was coming out and Karen's grip was slipping. Behind the scenes, law enforcement started digging deeper. The men who had smashed at our door were tracked down, and one by one they confessed. They admitted they had been paid directly by HOA funds to pose as authority figures. The deeper the investigation went, the more corruption surfaced. Embezzled funds, unauthorized contracts, and even links to private intimidation firms came to light. My wife's undercover work had cracked the dam wide open, and now everything was spilling out. But as the case built momentum, the danger also grew. Strange cars idled outside our house at night. Anonymous letters appeared in our mailbox, this time not even pretending to be official, just threats scrawled in angry handwriting. It was clear that exposing the truth had made us targets. Yet every attempt to silence us only made the authorities more determined. The investigation was no longer about one family's ordeal. It was about an entire neighborhood's safety and the abuse of power at the highest level of the HOA. By the time the case reached court, the community was electrified. The trial was not just about the fake cops. It was about years of unchecked corruption. Witness after witness took the stand, neighbors who had been too scared to speak before now finding their voices. My wife's evidence became the cornerstone of the prosecution. The recordings of men pounding on our door in mismatched uniforms were played before the jury, the grainy footage showing their aggression contrasted with their cowardly retreat when real sirens approached. Karen sat in the courtroom, her face a mask of defiance, but the weight of evidence was crushing. Financial records showed misused HOA funds, contracts with shady firms, and payments disguised as maintenance fees funneled toward intimidation tactics. The defense tried desperately to argue it was all a misunderstanding, that the HOA had only been trying to maintain order, but the lies fell flat. The jury wasn't buying it. The guilty verdict landed like a thunderclap. Karen and several board members were convicted on charges ranging from fraud to conspiracy, while the imposters faced charges of impersonating law enforcement and attempted breaking and entering. The sentences were harsh, and rightfully so. For the neighborhood, it was like a weight had been lifted. The HOA dissolved under legal pressure, and a new resident-led association began to form, one built on transparency and fairness rather than intimidation and fear. In the weeks that followed, neighbors who had once been distant began connecting again, reclaiming their sense of community. Families felt safe, kids played outside without fear of being watched, and the oppressive shadow of Karen's reign finally lifted. As for my wife, her role in uncovering everything became something of a legend in the neighborhood. She never sought recognition, but everyone knew that without her courage and persistence, the truth would never have come to light. And for me, the memory of that night, of pounding at the door and uniforms in the dark, remains a reminder of how close we came to being just another silenced household. Instead, it became the night everything changed, and justice finally caught up to those who thought they were untouchable. And that's how one HOA's terrifying intimidation scheme unraveled in the most shocking way. If you found this story as unbelievable as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more jaw-dropping HOA and Karen stories. Leave a comment down below. Have you ever dealt with a neighborhood power trip that went too far? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.